Happy Social Media Saturday, back with another episode. Today I am joined by Anna Sullivan, who is founder and CEO of the Creative Exchange and No Revision, agencies whose focus is to assist passionate challenger brands to the next level through marketing services. So Anna, thanks so much for joining me today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Yes, and I'm so curious about your journey. You have these two amazing agencies, not one, but two, and yeah, curious to learn all about that. But first, want to start where with like how you started out. So I saw in your bio that you began freelancing, working with brands like Southwest Airlines, Four Seasons Hotels, Wells Fargo's. How did you find your way into freelancing, and what was that journey like?
Yeah, so I'll start even like a little bit before that. I think I got into a really lucky situation where when I was in college, social media was still very new and, large companies like Target and Walmart were testing it out, but smaller companies and small businesses, that they weren't ready for that yet. So I was very lucky where I was working at a local store where I went to college and they're like, "Hey, we want to get an e-commerce site and we want to try out social media." And I'm like, "I
Perfect.
will volunteer for that." And volunteer, I'm getting paid while I'm there. But it was one of those things of where I'm getting paid to learn something new. And I think from the get-go, I was really interested in social media. I think it always really appealed to me of people all over the world can connect. I've always been somebody who I've traveled the world now, but at that point, never been anywhere. And that was a way that I could connect and see the world through other people's eyes. So it was a really great opportunity then. And once doing social media there, and I was like a junior in college, I'm like, "Hey, I think I'm really interested in social media. Maybe I should start telling more people that I do this." So through connecting with people in the community, I was volunteering a lot. That's kind of how I built up my network, I guess, and just said, "Hey, I do social media." And again, right place, right time, meeting people through a very authentic way, and honestly being the only person anyone knew in the area that did social media. So
Mhm.
I really just started freelancing that way. And I think after a few months, it all really clicked that like I want to do this, I don't want to say forever because that sounds
Yeah.
like a long time, but I assume now at this point I will be doing this forever. But it really clicked that, I think I want to have an agency. And I love that I got that freelance experience and I continued freelancing through having other jobs, but that's when it kind of made sense after I graduated. I'm like, "Hey, I need to go out and get an agency job. If I want to own an agency, I probably should go work for one and learn how to do that." So
That inside
again,
experience. Yep.
yeah, yeah, right place, right time. A friend from college, her sister was working at an agency, was going to hire their first social media strategist. She knew I did social media, connected me, and made it happen. So I will say I feel like I've been very lucky to again be in the right place at the right time, have known some of the right people to make that happen. And again, like I think now with everybody wanting to be a content creator, be on TikTok, they're at the right place, right time. They're at the right age of this happening, and it's kind of happening naturally for certain people. But that's how I got into the agency world and worked with those larger clients like Southwest and Four Seasons and Wells Fargo and things like that. And honestly, I believe I worked at the last agency. It was called Pace Communications for about a year and a half while I was still freelancing
Mm.
and starting my agency, which I really just transitioned the freelance clients into the agency because it was still just me, one person, just now, not for Anna Sullivan, but under the Creative Exchange, and have really built it organically from there.
Okay, amazing. And I'm sure a lot of people from our generation, that millennial, can resonate with the experience of being the intern in an office and all of a sudden social media is a thing and they say, okay,
Yeah,
we'll just hand it to the person who, had a phone since they were 13 or for most of their life. So
yeah,
um,
exactly.
and it sounds like too that you were just in flow. I've been hearing that from a lot of other people that have been on this show of just, I was in the right place in the right time. I was interested in this field. I was exploring it. I was letting people know I was wanting more work and experience in it. And then just experiences and opportunities came knocking at your door. So, and you were saying that you kind of organically transferred from freelancing. You were doing freelance and also working at the agency, and then kind of you started the Creative Exchange and your work was underneath that. Can you tell me more about that transition and how long was it just you? When did you decide I need to hire other people? Why did you then like launch new revisions? Lots of questions, but yeah, go for it.
Yeah. So I think, when I was in college working at that boutique, um, I mean, I've always been a go-getter and someone that, like, would have yard sales when I didn't have anything to sell. When I didn't have a job in college, I was selling jewelry. Like, I always found that opportunity. So I think, and even talking to my mom, she's like, "Oh, I always knew you were going to be an entrepreneur because that's just how you always have been." So I think it naturally came to me of like, "Oh, I have a service that I can make money from, and there's no real startup cost. I just needed my computer and internet to make this happen." And I had a camera at the time, and now our iPhones are pretty great with that. And back in that time, and there's still people doing this, but as a social media person, you're doing the photos, the videos, the copywriting, the graphic design, and
Yes.
now thankfully that has kind of like everybody has their individual job to do all these things. But I think once I realized, like, oh, people want to pay me to do this, like, bring it on, like, continue to tell people about me and put me out there. So once I was making enough money with the freelance clients and felt comfortable enough to leave that agency job, that's when I feel like it really got serious with the creative exchange. And I just emailed people and, was like, hey, you're going to start seeing the invoicing now, say the creative exchange. It's still me, nothing's changing, just the name. I want to make this a business. Um, and filed it for, an LLC and got the business bank account and all that good stuff. But I think, and we can talk about this a little bit later with mistakes that I've made, but I've always just been somebody that bootstrapped and let it grow organically. And maybe that has slowed me down in growth. But I think it made sense for the time. And I was like 23. I think, I was fresh out of college, doing all this, but it just kind of naturally flowed. Like, I did meet someone that was working really closely with me that kind of took over all the photography and the creative direction while I was handling a lot of the admin stuff, copywriting, things like that. And then again, naturally grew to where, hey, we're making enough money. What do I not like to do? I don't like to have to
Mhm.
deal with clients every single day. So that's when we hire an account manager. And at the time, everybody's freelance part-time, just, hey, we can meet people that will take $15 an hour, $20 an hour. And this is like almost 10 years ago. So rates are much higher now. But we can meet people that want to work with creatives and are willing to take on a small amount of hours. So I've kind of built it from there, and it'll be 9 years in August, to where again it's always been bootstrapped. We've just naturally grown and hired people as it made sense. We do have a mix of like full-time and part-time freelancers now, but in the very beginning it was very much like part-time freelance, kind of helping people fill in the gaps. And I would say in the beginning too, it was more of those well-rounded people that could help in a lot of different areas. And now I would say everybody has a very specific focus, whether they're an account manager or a graphic designer or a creative video strategist or a paid ads manager. So that's kind of how we built it. And again, this has all happened now over the last 9 years. So it's a lot of changes and a lot of growth since then.
Right. And it all takes time and it all takes trial and error. But something that you said that I think is really important, especially for people who are thinking about starting a business or transitioning from freelance to having their own agency, is that you kind of just switched up the name. So that was the first thing, and nothing really changed other than
Yep.
you started to think about it as a larger thing. Something larger than just you, and that you took on people slowly. I think there's this idea that if you start a business, it has to be, you jump right into like, I have an agency, I have 3 full-time employees, but that's not often very realistic. And sometimes it takes maybe even a couple of years, is what I'm hearing from you. And some other people who've started agencies, of like just having a group of people who can do things part-time or
Yeah.
come in for a few hours. Um, so that's really interesting. And
Yeah. I think just to add to that, because I'm much older now and I was so young doing that, I felt really good about it. And I'm glad I don't have like really a corporate background. I was in corporate for a year and a half, and then have been doing my own thing since. I do have friends now that have started their agencies later in life. They went through corporate, they worked at many agencies, and kind of go right after funding and hiring full time people. And I see their
mm,
growth, and I'm like, oh, like I wish would have grown that fast. I'm kind of jealous of this, but that's just what made sense for me at the time.
okay, cool. So there's a different, sounds like there's different routes based on where you
Exactly. Yeah.
are. And if you are willing and eager to go get capital to support some of that growth early on. Interesting.
Yeah.
And I mean, speaking of the corporate route, there's so many people now who are on the job hunt, um, and are sending out hundreds of applications, and in some cases considering jumping and doing their own thing. Do you have any advice for people who want to jump into freelance or agency life, and how that might be different from the job search, or maybe in some ways similar?
Yeah, I feel like I talk to people about this all the time, but it's first of all, applying to jobs has always been a number game. It's the same thing with trying to get clients. Like, I mean, obviously, you want to have your resume together and customize it to fit the job description, all that good stuff. Or if they request a cover letter, actually sending one. Because, I mean, I have jobs that I post all the time. I interview people a lot, and we get hundreds of applications for everything. So, if there's something I requested and you didn't fill that, honestly, I'm going ahead and putting you to the side. Like, no
Yeah,
one's
absolutely.
better than anyone in this beginning stages. I personally am not using AI to go through those things, but a lot of people are, and they're looking for keywords. So I think, like, always optimizing what you have. But it is, and again, making sure you fulfill the requirements, because that's the first thing that I kind of cut people out. But really making sure that you're applying to enough, jobs out there. And I think, there's just as many freelance jobs on LinkedIn or whatever websites, very similarly to full-time jobs. But I don't have the most time for these things, but there's so many communities out there. Like there's one I just joined called Creatively. There's another one called Pretty Little Marketer that I just joined, where there are always people connecting with other people. That is how
Mhm.
I built my business. And I wouldn't be as successful as I was today if I didn't have that in-person networking and things like that. Now, again, that's 10 years ago. Now, especially with COVID, I'm not as in person as much anymore at things. I did go to a conference for the first time this year since before COVID. But I think the more you can network, whether that is trying to do things online through LinkedIn, through these online groups, or meeting people in person, is really helpful, because so much of any industry, from what I've seen, is it's all about who you know. So trying to optimize, you know, not feeling like 10 applications a week is a lot. That's not a lot. Like, we were talking about a LinkedIn post of a girl that I think applied to 4,000 jobs or something and then finally got one.
Mhm.
So, you really have to put yourself out there if you want to try to get anything these days. And I think sometimes freelance might be a little bit easier to get because it's less, I guess, impact for the company, because a lot of companies, they can't just easily fire people. Freelance is much more fluid, and I think they're a little bit more to opening up jobs and to different people and things like that to kind of test. But
Yeah,
that also
and they
puts
don't
you
have
at
to worry
risk
about
too.
health insurance and all those other benefits.
Exactly. Yeah. But you put yourself at risk too for not accepting health insurance and making sure that you always have freelance jobs coming in. So there's pros and cons to both sides of things, but you have to put the work in, honestly.
Yeah. Either way, whether you're doing the job search or you are looking for
Yeah.
clients, it's going to be work either way. But it sounds like, from what I'm hearing from you, that it's not just the job search, not just the applications or the client outreach, but also building your community. That's super important, whether you're corporate
Exactly.
um, or freelance. And I've definitely seen that to be true, in my experience. But
Yeah, and
well,
one other thing I'll just quickly add to that is, I think, some people just have a resume. A lot of times when I talk to freelancers, we want to see a portfolio with case
yeah.
studies. So having
Mhm.
a website, I think, we do get a lot of referrals still to this day, but people find us organically on Google. I don't pay for SEO or anything like that, but the more you can put out there, or, people looking for someone that worked with a competitor, that's how we get a lot of our clients these days. Like, oh, we saw you worked with these companies. We're very similar and trying to do the same thing. Like, can you help us? So I think that's really helpful to do as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, the portfolio is essential. And I had a mentor tell me once that I can't remember the exact phrase that she used, but to put in numbers that show exactly what your impact was.
100%.
That
Yeah.
is so important and helpful to whoever is looking at your materials, to see the kind of impact that you have made and could potentially make in your organization. So
Yeah,
uh,
100% agree with that. I'm always looking for numbers.
definitely some proof. And so thank you so much, Anna. This was really great. I appreciate your time. I appreciate your insights. And for anybody who's watching and you want to learn more about Creative Exchange, about No Revisions, about Anna, all the links are below. And yep, again, thanks for your time.
Yeah, thank you so much.